This is the Dzogchen Sunday Lama Jigme Gyatso of the Buddha Joy Meditation School. Welcome to Meditate Like a Jedi. This morning, let us explore why 99% of beginners cannot sit during meditation, after which we will practice group meditation. Let us begin with a bit of the old mythology, shall we? Sturgeon's law reminds us that 90% of everything sucks, including humans, including meditation teachers. Therefore, 90% of meditation teachers, sadly, are rigid, fearful, superstitious, controlling, elitist, cryptic, competitive, and cruel. These are the boneheads who will insist that you are not a true meditator until you've mastered the full lotus position. Hey, that seems swell. Until you actually check the words attributed to the Buddha, where he doesn't teach that at all. His teachings on sitting are vague and concise. Now, that is not necessarily an argument against the full lotus position, but it is not an argument for the full lotus position. So quick like a bunny, I'm going to tap this button over here and highlight the second bit. I'm not sure if this is the right term. I'm calling it archaeology. But when we study, when we examine the most ancient Buddhist statuary, we do not see the full lotus position depicted. What is it instead that we see? The quarter lotus position, wherein one leg rests upon the other, and that the feet are very much like our wrists. Our shins are like our wrists. They have two bones that allow our appendages or extremities to twist. And by twisting the bones, gently twisting the bones of our lower leg, we allow the top of our foot to rest upon either leaves or, in our case, a folded yoga blanket, which protects the crowns of the ankles. So the legs rest upon each other. This is the quarter lotus position we see in the most ancient statuary. And my goal is that by the end of this morning's lesson, it will feel very much possible for you. Now, before we go into the mechanics, I want to continue with the overview, if that's okay. 1, 2, 3. Let's get pragmatic. We do not sit to look pretty. There are people who would say, yes, you must sit majestically with a faint smile on your face so that others will be drawn to meditation. What are you, a salesman? No, that's not why we do any of this. I have made virtually every conceivable mistake upon the path of enlightenment, so you won't have to. And one of the mistakes I made was thinking it was spiritual to ignore my body's pain signals. Consequently, I've got arthritis now, which is not mandatory and is often avoidable. So when we sit, the key is to sit in as sustainable posture as possible. I once had a teacher who laughed at me and said, anything you do for an hour is going to make you sore and tired. And of course, he was working blue when he said that, but that applies to meditation. It is irrational to expect us to hold one position motionless for an hour without harming our joints. It is totally rational to make subtle adjustments to our posture every 5 or 10 or 15 minutes to make sitting more sustainable. No, Virginia. The purpose of meditation is not to chase trance. That is a lie of patriarchy. The purpose of meditation is to simply cooperate with our autonomic nervous system vulnerably, passively, viscerally, randomly, fleetingly, and therapeutically. That's it. So we sit in a way that is sustainable and that makes it much easier for our body to spontaneously elongate its spine as we inhale and then relax during our exhale. Now that we've covered the overview, let's now explore the rules of thumb. And to do that, I'm going to go to Jumbo Cam and I'm going to spin the camera around. So this could be a bit of a three-ring circus. If you're old enough, think of the Ed Sullivan Show. Think of a variety act on the Ed Sullivan Show. So what I'm going to do is tap button 5. Okay, behind the scenes tour. So hold on to your stomachs. Here comes the spin. And here I am. I'm going to slide this back. Wait. Okay. Now, is it possible to sit without a yoga blanket? Of course it is. Yeah. Here we go. Yes, it is possible to sit without a yoga blanket. However, it can be useful. So that is where I would like to begin. This is a yoga blanket. It is also known as a Mexican yoga blanket. I don't know if that is racist or not. I hope it's not. You can find this online for about 20 bucks. These are wonderful because, let's face it, sitting can be sweaty business, and it's nice to wash this at least once a week. So let's explore how to fold it. For that, I'm going to stand up. So I'm wearing compression shorts under my shanta or lower robes. So have no fear, I will not be flashing you. So here is a yoga blanket. Let's fold it widthwise so that its dimensions are reminiscent of a yoga blanket. Now let's fold it once lengthwise and a second time lengthwise. You'll notice that one edge is messy and the other edge is blunt. Because of multiple health challenges, I have a bad back. And so when I sit, I can't strap on a heating pad. So I sit next to a space heater. So I don't want these thin bits to ignite. So I always put the blunt side facing the space heater. In the 1% chance that you do the same thing, or if you're an aging meditator, you do the same thing, this might save you a headache. Or if you're Yiddish, save you some tsuris. So I'm not going to teach you how to sit in the full lotus posture. We already explored the folly of that. So as children, as toddlers, sitting in the quarter lotus is effortless. After a lifetime of sitting on couches and chairs, it can be a challenge. So I began exploring this in my early 30s. So this worked for me. It might work for you as well. So my friends on the clock act, I'm sorry if the Camera action is subpar. So here we go. Consider, if you will, the human wrist. The upper arm has one bone, the humerus. The lower arm has two bones, the ulnus and the radial. They actually can twist. Because those bones can twist, so can our hand. Something very similar occurs with our legs. Yes, we have a femur, but we also have a tibia and a fibia. And those bad boys can twist to a much lesser degree. So, many people complain that when they try to sit in meditation, they're grinding the bony protrusions or crowns of their ankles into the floor, into the yoga blanket. And of course that's uncomfortable. We have evolved to feel pain when bone touches something hard. That's not because we are hedonistic. It's not because we're self-centered. It is a survival mechanism because broken bones do not necessarily seldom to contribute to longevity, especially 300,000 years ago. So, by twisting our feet the way we could twist our hand so that our instep is down, that protects our ankles because the tops of our feet are much more durable and flexible. Now that begs the question, how do we rotate this bad boy? Let's explore kinesiology. Our knees are hinge joints. Just like this, if we treat our knees like a ball joint, we will injure ourselves and we just don't need extra suffering. So we respect the limitations of our knees. It is our hips that are ball joints. If you're in your childhood, you might have taken ballet lessons, or your partner might have taken ballet lessons, or your sister or cousin might have taken ballet lessons. They can verify this. You could look up ballet instruction on YouTube and they'll tell you you turn out from the hip, not the knees. And many an aging ballerina will tell you that if you force her turn out from your knees, you will injure the knees and accelerate the manifestation or the development of arthritis. And nobody wants that. So we do our best to place either foot as flat as we can on our yoga blanket. Now, the first time we try this, it's going to be ungainly and asymmetric. And it's probably going to look, oopsie, something like this. That's fine. We don't force it. We let time and gravity do the work. Play with this for as little as 5 or 10 or 15 minutes every 12 hours. And within a week or two, our body will remember how to sit this way, which is quite lovely. So in the Mahayana tradition, there is an outline that's very famous called Vairochana's, the 7-point posture of Vairochana. And what I try to do is, with everything, is pull the teachings out of the clutches of patriarchy. Kind of like the opening scene in Young Frankenstein. If you know, you know. And show you a rational way of doing it. So the first point is what I've already covered, the folding of the blanket and the folding of the legs in a sustainable and rational manner. The second would be the hands. And in a previous video, I demonstrated Bengali crease counting, which is an iconoclastic method of holding one's hands, but which I find to be the most sustainable. I, like many people with Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, ridiculously sensitive to EM phenomena, and holding my hands in the universal mudra caused too much congestion in my lumbar spine. So I recommend using either the non-thumb touching of the classic Theravadas or the Bengali crease counting, once again, that I've demonstrated in other videos. And I'm happy to demonstrate it in future videos, so don't worry about that. The second point would be our shoulders. So we don't want to pull our shoulder blades together. We want our shoulder blades to open up like the wings of a vulture. Vultures are used often in Buddhist iconography because they remind us of the specter of impermanence, not in a creepy, scary, manipulative, patriarchal way where it's like, you're going to die and you're going to be judged, so you better look out. You better be good for goodness sake. Forget that noise. In the matriarchal sense, impermanence reminds us that as we relax into our exhalation, whatever permanence we might have perceived or imagined or recalled during our previous inhalation could feel less permanent, less stressful, less defining, less solid. If you enjoy Martin Scorsese and you have seen Kundun, who can forget the burial scene for the protagonist's father when the lamas are chanting their prayers and the funerary technicians are sharpening their knives so they can chop up his father's cadaver and feed it to the vultures, which I think is far more ecologically sound than stuffing it full of chemicals, popping it in a concrete vault, and sticking it in the ground for the low, low price of tens of thousands of dollars. So we were talking about vultures, and we're talking about our scapula, also known as our shoulder blades. So I began my meditative journey studying for both simultaneously yoga and Qigong, Indian yoga, Chinese Qigong. And what I've learned is that we can control the art of controlling the angle of our scapula is a study in subtlety, the pitch of our pelvis, the pitch of our head. These things influence our spine. As a little boy, my stepfather took the family out to a local lake. We rented an aluminum boat with an outboard motor. And when he got bored of steering the boat, he had me sit next to the outboard motor. He taught me how to steer it. And he told me to point the bow between these two geological points. And he told me, when the nose gets too far to this point, adjust it this way. Nose gets too far to that point, adjust it that way. And I took it very seriously with the seriousness of an autistic child. And that was my experience with navigation. Navigation is a study of micro adjustments. The need for an adjustment is not an indictment. The number of variables at play are astronomical. Anyone who tells you otherwise is ill-informed or deceitful. Therefore, since there are so many variables at play all the time affecting everything, to expect to not have to make little teeny course corrections is an exercise in futility. So we've talked about legs and hands and shoulder blades. All right, that's 3. Let's talk about 4 would be the tongue. So some people get really, really, really uptight. Let's take a casual approach. There's no one magical spot on the roof of your mouth to stick your tongue. However, it can be helpful to put either the tip of your tongue or the middle bit of your tongue, if you're into mewing, upon the roof of your mouth. And the rule of thumb is lips closed, but teeth do not touch. There is a very popular Dzogchen teacher says, but what if you have a stuffy nose? Train yourself to meditate with your mouth open. Well, if you have a stuffy nose, you can always throw in the mix of meditating with your mouth open. However, if you are ill, sitting is athletic. Give yourself permission to slouch or rest or lie down or just, watch kitty cat videos on YouTube until you feel better. One of the most important things, 50% of the Buddha's Eightfold Path pertains to loving kindness. And that applies to everyone, including our body and our mind. And so when we're sick, when we have hay fever, and we don't feel as robust, don't force yourself. This is not a time to be a neurotic, guilt-ridden Jew like this guy. Exercise the courage to rest. So we've talked about the mouth. Let's talk about, there's a wonderful Zen tradition that says once you've got your legs in position, do the blown palm series, which sounds deliciously salacious, but it's not. So you just rocking forward, back, and side to side, and twist, and you're not trying to stretch your range of motion. You're just helping your body find equilibrium. There are some people would say that if your posture isn't perfect, you have failed. No. There's some people say we must concentrate upon our body. No. Concentration exhausts both our medial as well as dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, which can induce us to present with symptoms of depression, no less trigger our amygdala, the seat of anxiety and aggression, which doesn't sound like a productive meditation session. Instead of relying upon the front of the brain to originally concentrate, we rely upon the middle bit of our spinal cord to notice, vulnerably, passively, viscerally, randomly, and fleetingly. Sometimes we'll notice our posture and we will experience the spontaneous impulse to correct it. Other times we won't. The test of our meditation is not the rigidity with which we sit, but our ability of our choices and utterances and deeds to flow not from contrived calculations nor from wild scatteriness, but from love's deeply centered spontaneity, which is a fringe benefit of simply cooperating with our middle spinal cord to notice, and the extremes of our spinal cord to relax. And don't worry, the neuroscience of mindfulness and meditation is a subject for a previous and a future live stream. Here's a cool rule of thumb. As we breathe in time you will notice circuitry that's always been there, but not been perceived. Circuitry that causes us to feel the impulse to lengthen our spine as we breathe in and rest as we breathe out. Just as our lungs articulate with the inhalation and the exhalation, to a lesser degree, so does our spine. Or at least that's how it seems to be. That's how the motion correlates. Excuse me. Let's talk about a controversial issue. What are you going to do with your eyes? So once again, if you are on the path of religious patriarchy, you're going to be super, super rigid, super, super cranky, and peace will never experience, you won't experience it. The only way to be a happy camper is to traverse the path of spiritual matriarchy, which is profoundly flexible, is it not? Let us exercise the courage of listening to our bodies. Sometimes we will feel the need to tighten our eyes closed, other times to close them softly and gently, other times to hold them at half-mast, other times to open them wide. Sometimes we will experience the need to gaze, to maintain perfect posture with our face perpendicular to the floor, and yet our eyes rolling up to gaze upon the sky or gaze at the horizon or gaze at the earth. Once again, in the Bon shamanistic tradition of Tibet, there are some teachers who are very, very rigid about that. And they even attribute it to Dzogchen. Well, they might attribute it to the present experience of Dzogchen. If we go all the way back to the Swat Valley of Odiyana, present-day Pakistan, and we were to confer with the great Buddhist reformer Prahe Vajra, whom the Tibetans refer to as Garab Dorje, he did not teach anything about eye gazing at all. He did not. And you might say, "Ooh, that's because it's a sacred teaching." No, it's because it's a shamanistic teaching of Tibet that insinuated itself into the Buddhist teachings, not unlike the way, quote unquote, European paganism insinuated itself into Catholicism. And that's a wonderful discussion for a future time. But the thing is this: the greatest luminaries were not uptight. They were groovy. They were not like grumpy Mace Windu. They were like groovy Qui-Gon Jinn. They were not like the Big Lebowski. They were more like the dude. So we can take a very relaxed, mellow approach to sitting and working with our shoulder blades, and working with our spine, and working with our mouth, and working with our eyes. We weren't born knowing how to walk. That was a learned skill. Let us give ourselves permission to have a learning curve with everything we do. I once dated an individual who suffered from a borderline personality disorder. And whenever she would try something new, she would have a complete meltdown because it wasn't done perfectly. When we notice ourselves not doing things perfectly, and we notice ourselves feeling anger or despair, that is not a shortcoming. That is simply grist for the mill. Remember, as we feel our chest swell, we watch the antics of mind, even if those antics are self-criticism. As we feel our chest subtly sink as gently we exhale, and we rest into the non-graspable nature of that same self-criticism. So even being our worst enemy, wasn't there a Orange County punk rock band who had a song called I am my own worst enemy, because sometimes I kick my own ass? I forgot their name. If you remember their name, let me know in the chat window. But yes, when we are being our worst enemy, that can be part of our meditation. When we notice ourselves being mean to ourselves, we can watch the meanness, and then we can relax into the illusion of its non-graspability. And then when when we take our next inhalation and the cycle begins anew, we can enjoy it some more. One of the major teachings found in the Opus Magus of the great Buddhist meditation teacher 2feb26 is that as we sit in meditation, there are no good or bad emotions. There are just emotions. There are no pleasurable or painful sensations. There are just sensations. Pleasure or pain or happiness or sorrow are not indictments or exonerations. They're just stuff that we get to notice as we breathe in and release as we breathe out. That's it. It's as simple as that. So what I'd like to do now is, this is the point in the live stream where I create a break for the students who will be watching the excerpt on the Tube app, and then I continue meditating for everybody else who wants to practice group meditation. So I'm going to waddle over to the computer right now in a completely undignified manner. Oi! Yiddish is optional. Woof, here we go. Okay, here we go. I look like the goblin. I look like Gollum, don't I? My precious. So, okay, all dignity, all the time. Let's see. Here we go. You have taken your first step into a much larger world. If you feel that I have earned it, you could give this live stream a thumbs up. You could even help support this channel. 4. Meditate like a Jedi is made possible due to the generosity of viewers just like you. And this is when we get ready for our group practice. So what I'm going to do, you guessed it, is move the blanket and spin the computer around, do the the setup 2 dance. Oy vey, here we go. Ooh. Okay, one moment. Okay. Well, hello there, Francine. So, while I'm waiting for my water to boil, quick review if that's okay. The essence of meditation is simply watching the antics of mind. The easiest way to do that is to silently and mentally recite the verb watch as we feel our chest swell with breath. The essence of meditation is to rest in mind's non-graspable aspect. The easiest way to do that is to silently and mentally recite the verb rest every time we feel our chest subtly sink as gently we exhale. Okay, so that in sound means it's time for me to fetch my water. Be right back. Oi! Ah, the glories of warm water. Oi, oi, oi. Okay. Whew. L'chaim. And now, let us sit and breathe and watch and rest. The alarm's going to go off in a minute or two. Let's ignore that when it happens as best we can. I'm reminded of a line from Princess Bride that applies to doing anything, including sitting. Life is pain, princess. Anyone who tells you otherwise is trying to sell you something. So what I do is I showed you when I switch positions, sometimes my right leg is on the top, sometimes my right leg's on the bottom. Every 5 or 10 or 15 minutes, as my body seems to bark, I listen to it by adjusting that. Okay, let's continue. The moment you have a specific question about the philosophy or technique of meditation, do not hesitate to type your question in great detail in the chat window, for I tend to check for questions about once every 5 minutes or so. Quick review, if you just joined us. The essence of mindfulness is to vulnerably, passively, viscerally, randomly, and fleetingly watch the antics of mind. The most efficient way of doing this is to silently and mentally recite the verb watch every time we feel our chest swell with breath. The essence of meditation is to physically relax in coordination with our exhalation in such a manner that that which we noticed during our previous inhalation could fleetingly feel a little bit less stressful, a little bit less permanent, a little bit less defining, a little bit less solid, at least temporarily until the next in-breath when the cycle begins afresh. The most efficient way to practice this meditation is the most efficient way to rest in mind's non-graspable aspect is to silently and mentally recite the verb watch. Recite the verb rest every time we feel our chest subtly sink as gently we exhale. In approximately 10 3/4 hours, I would very much like to return to lead today's evening lesson, followed by the group practice of meditating like a Jedi. And if you are as geeky as me, may the Force be with you always.